If you were to look at a satellite map of the Earth, and I asked you to point to exactly where the most opulent, like insanely wealthy city of the ancient world was going to be built, you'd probably look for a few specific geographic markers.
Oh, absolutely. Instantly, you'd look for natural advantages. A sprawling ancient forest for endless timber, or, maybe a formidable mountain range packed with gold and silver mines.
Right.
Or at the very least, a natural deep-water harbor that's protected from storms.
Yeah,
Something that could serve as a global crossroads for maritime trade.
exactly. But if I pointed my finger at a flat, sun-baked, totally arid patch of dirt sitting right next to a river valley, like no stones, no trees, no natural defensive barriers.
Just endless mud.
Yeah, just endless, punishing mud and sand. You would probably think I was completely out of my mind. And yet, that exact patch of seemingly worthless dirt became Babylon. Literally the richest city in the known world.
It's crazy to think about.
It is. But here is the paradox we are entangling today. If Babylon was so incredibly wealthy, why were the men who actually built its chariots, carved its massive walls, and wove its fine garments completely broke?
Yeah, that is the ultimate economic contradiction, isn't it? We're dealing with a city whose immense, legendary wealth, I mean, the towering walls, the hanging gardens, the gold-laden temples, was 100% man-made.
Entirely fabricated.
Right. It was achieved through brilliant engineering like these massive irrigation canals that diverted the Euphrates River to water the desert, and through the strict, almost religious application of financial wisdom.
So the wealth wasn't in the ground.
Exactly. It wasn't in the ground at all. It was in the minds of the people who organized the society.
Which really brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are cracking open the translated clay tablets, the ancient fables, and the detailed records from the classic source material, The Richest Man in Babylon.
It's such a foundational text.
It really is. And we want to find out why hard work doesn't inherently equal wealth. Like, why do some people effortlessly attract gold while others toil until their bones ache just to survive?
And most importantly, how you can apply these exact 5,000-year-old strategies to your modern financial life right now.
Yes, exactly.
To really grasp the gravity of this, though, we have to look at the psychological toll of that economic contradiction on the average citizen.
Right. Let's jump right into that reality. Early on, we are introduced to two friends. There's Ben Sear, who is a chariot maker, and Kabi, who is a musician.
Two very common professions.
Yeah, and I want to paint this picture for you because it feels disturbingly relevant today. So it's brutally hot. Ben Sear is sitting on this low stone wall around his property. He's sweating profusely, just staring at this half-finished chariot in his courtyard.
He's stuck.
Completely stuck. His wife keeps walking by, giving him these pointed, desperate looks because the food pantry is completely empty. And right past his house, the king's water bearers are marching by in this massive, endless line.
Carrying heavy water skins just to keep the lavish hanging gardens green.
Right. The visual contrast there is intentional and just brutal. Bansir is surrounded by the physical manifestation of supreme wealth, yet he is paralyzed by his own poverty.
Then Kabi, the musician, walks up with his harp, and he's cheerful, completely oblivious to his friend's dark mood.
He's just living his life.
Yeah, and he casually asks to borrow 2 shekels for a feast that night.
And Bansir just stares at him. He delivers this line that hits like a punch to the gut. He says, if I had 2 shekels, I wouldn't lend them to you. Not even to my best friend, because those 2 shekels would be my entire fortune.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Kabi is completely thrown by this. I mean, he looks at Bansir, who is known across the whole city as an incredibly hard worker, a master craftsman.
Not a lazy guy at all.
Not at all. So Kabi asks him why he's just sitting there instead of finishing the chariot. And Bansir confesses that he just woke up from a dream where he was a wealthy man.
Oh, that's the worst kind of dream when you're broke.
It really is. In the dream, he had a heavy purse, he was throwing coins to beggars, buying expensive jewelry for his wife, and just feeling this profound sense of security.
And then he wakes up.
Yeah, waking up and reaching for an empty belt just threw him into a deep, paralyzing depression.
I want to pause here because this is where I really want to push back on a major societal myth. It's something we still struggle with today, constantly. Bansir works from dawn to dusk. He makes the absolute best chariots in Babylon, but he is totally broke.
It's the ancient equivalent of living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly. Despite being at the top of your field and putting in 60-hour work weeks, why doesn't hard work directly translate to wealth?
Well, Bansir and Kabi are asking themselves the exact same question. They're sitting on that wall realizing they live in the wealthiest city on the planet,
Mm.
a place renowned across the world for its mountains of gold.
But they have nothing.
Absolutely nothing to show for their lifetimes of blistering labor. They realize they've spent their whole lives acting like the beasts of burden they see pulling the merchant's cart.
Wow. That's a dark realization.
It is. Working hard clearly isn't the missing variable. The missing variable is the knowledge of how wealth is accumulated. So they make a radical decision.
Right, they decide to seek out their childhood friend, Arkad.
Yep. Arkad, who is universally recognized as the richest man in Babylon.
So they gather up some other struggling friends from the neighborhood and go confront Arkad. And it is a confrontation. It's not a polite chat.
Definitely not.
They essentially say, hey, we played the same games as kids. We sat under the same teachers. We worked just as hard as you do, if not harder. Why did fate choose you to be rich and leave us poor?
And Arkad does not sugarcoat his response at all.
No, he doesn't.
He strips away their excuses instantly. He tells them point blank that if they haven't accumulated wealth in the years since their youth, it is simply because they either failed to learn the laws that govern the building of wealth, or they learned them and arrogantly failed to apply them.
He just completely dismantles the idea of blind fate, or the goddess of luck suddenly blessing someone for no reason.
Right, and he tells them his own origin story to prove it. Arkad wasn't born into Babylonian royalty.
Not at all.
He was a humble scribe, working brutal hours in the Hall of Records, literally physically carving cuneiform onto clay tablets day in and day out.
Just backbreaking work.
Yeah. And one day, a very wealthy, intimidating moneylender named Algamish comes in. He demands a copy of the Ninth Law by the very next morning.
And Arkad sees an opening here.
He does. He strikes a deal. He says, I will carve this incredibly long, complex tablet overnight, but in exchange, you have to tell me the secret to getting rich.
It's a super audacious move for a lowly scribe, and the physical toll is immense. Arkad works entirely through the night. His back is spasming. The acrid smell of the wick lamp gives him a blinding headache.
His eyes are burning from straining in the dim light.
Exactly. But he finishes the task. The next morning, Algamish arrives, and he actually honors the deal. The core principle he delivers to this exhausted scribe is shockingly simple. Algamish says, keep a portion of all you earn, specifically no less than 1/10 of it.
Which sounds so basic to us now.
Right. I mean, hold on. You're telling me the richest man in the ancient world essentially just delivered the ancient equivalent of skip your daily latte? That feels incredibly reductive.
It is still that way.
Like, if someone is drowning in rent, food costs, and just trying to keep their family alive, telling them to just slice off 10% feels almost insulting. How did Arkad, who was barely scraping by, actually process that?
Well, Arkad had the exact same reaction you're having. He pushes back immediately.
Yeah.
He says to Algamish, but I already keep all I earn. It's in my purse.
Right.
And Algamish actually laughs at him. He exposes the fatal flaw in Arkad's thinking. He asks the scribe, do you not pay the garment maker? Do you not pay the sandal maker? Do you not pay the farmer for the food you eat?
Ah, so the money is just passing through his hands.
Exactly that. Algamish points out that Arkad is diligently paying every single merchant in Babylon except himself.
Wow.
The psychological shift here is massive. Algamish tells him, you act like a slave because you work just to pay your master for food and clothing.
That reframing is brilliant.
By paying yourself first, before the butcher, before the tailor, you fundamentally change your identity. You transition from a slave working for daily sustenance to a master building an estate.
It's essentially setting up an automatic subscription to your future self.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, today we subscribe to streaming services, to meal delivery kits, to gym memberships we never even use, but we consistently forget to subscribe to our own financial independence.
We do. But we have to look at what happens next in the story, because Arkad didn't become a master overnight just by hiding away 10%. His first attempt at investing was a spectacular disaster.
Oh, right. The brickmaker.
Yeah, he dutifully saved his 10th for an entire year. And then he took that hard-earned accumulation and handed it all over to a brickmaker named Asmur, who was traveling to Phoenicia.
Which sounds like a terrible idea already.
Gets worse. The plan was for Asmur to buy rare Phoenician jewels so they could bring them back, sell them to the wealthy class in Babylon, and split the massive profits.
Oh, this hurts to even hear. A brickmaker buying jewels.
It's a classic amateur mistake. When Algamish returns a year later to check on his protege and hears about this investment, he is furious. But he also uses it as a teaching moment.
What does he say?
He asks Arkad, would you go to the bread maker to ask about the alignment of the stars? No. You would go to the astronomer.
Makes perfect sense.
Arkad's entire year of savings was wiped out because the Phoenicians saw a gullible brickmaker coming and sold him worthless pieces of colored glass.
The key takeaway there is brutal, but absolutely necessary. You must seek advice only from those who are demonstrably competent to give it.
Always.
It's the modern equivalent of taking stock tips from your brother-in-law who just watched a YouTube video on crypto instead of consulting an actual fiduciary. Don't ask a brickmaker about diamonds.
Exactly. So Arkad had to absorb that loss and start entirely from scratch. He went back to the Hall of Records. He saved his tenth again. But the next time he had capital to deploy, he invested it with a shield maker who needed to buy shipments of bronze.
Okay, a much better match of skills.
Bronze was a material the shield maker intimately understood. The market demand was clear, and Arkad earned a steady, reliable return on his capital. That was the turning point from theory to execution.
Okay, so we see how Arkad learned this on an individual level, but how does the personal financial revelation of a single scribe become a citywide economic doctrine?
Right. The narrative scales up significantly here.
It does. The king of Babylon returns from a long military campaign and is briefed on a massive systemic economic crisis. The city itself is rich, but the wealth is entirely concentrated in the hands of a very small elite class.
The tale as old as time.
Seriously. The common people, the builders, the artisans, they just don't have enough money to buy food or participate in the economy.
And the king recognizes that a city of impoverished citizens is a fundamentally weak city. He wants to democratize this wealth-building knowledge. So he summons Arkad, who's now the richest man in the city, and tasks him with teaching a masterclass.
A literal masterclass.
Yeah. Arkad is told to take 100 men into the Temple of Learning and teach them the exact steps to acquire gold.
This masterclass forms the absolute core of Babylonian financial wisdom. Arkad breaks his philosophy down into the 7 cures for a lean purse. And I want to walk through these because the psychology behind them is so deeply rooted in human nature that they are just as applicable today as they were 5 millennia ago.
Let's start with cure number 1, which is essentially the Alchemist rule. Start thy purse to fattening. Save 10%.
Simple enough on paper.
But Arkad immediately addresses the pushback you brought up earlier. The men in the class protest, asking how they can save 10% when their entire income isn't enough to cover their current daily necessities.
Which naturally forces Arkad to introduce cure number 2, control thy expenditures.
Yes.
And here's where Arkad drops a profound insight on human behavior. He tells the class that what we categorize as necessary expenses will always grow to equal our incomes unless we actively and ruthlessly resist that tendency.
We recognize that today as Parkinson's law. The adage that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. Applied to finance, it means your lifestyle will always inflate to consume your entire paycheck.
Think of your income like a gas expanding in a container. It doesn't matter if the container is a tiny glass jar or a massive industrial warehouse. The gas doesn't stay in one corner.
It naturally spreads out until it touches every single inch of available space.
Exactly. Unless you actively build a pressurized, airtight wall inside that container, which is your budget, your expenses will always expand to the absolute edges of your paycheck.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. And Arkad looks at his class and points out a glaring inconsistency. They all have different professions. They all earn vastly different incomes. Some have large families. Some are single.
But they're all broke.
Yet every single one of their purses is equally empty. Why? Because they are confusing their fundamental survival necessities with their endless, escalating desires.
Needs versus wants.
He tells them they must separate the two. A budget is not a restriction meant to punish you. A budget is a defensive weapon. It is a tool to protect your growing wealth from your own casual, fleeting wishes.
I love that. A defensive weapon.
You budget your 90% so you can afford to live with dignity, while fiercely walling off the 10% that is building your ultimate freedom.
So assuming someone successfully builds that wall, you've got your 10% saved, you're managing the 90%. Cure number 3 introduces the next phase, make thy gold multiply.
Because saving isn't enough.
Right. Having a heavy purse is great for your anxiety, but money sitting under a mattress or today sitting in a check account yielding 0.01% is stagnant. It's actually losing value to inflation.
Definitely.
Arkad insists that every coin you save is a golden slave that must be put to work And the children of that golden slave must also be put to work.
He is outlining the mechanics of compound interest thousands of years before the mathematical formulas were formally published.
The source material gives a fantastic, tangible example of this. Arcad tells his class about a farmer who took 10 silver coins to a moneylender on the day his first son was born.
Oh.
He asked the lender to keep it invested until the boy reached adulthood. The moneylender agreed to an interest rate where he would add a quarter of the value to the principal every 4 years.
And the math on this is where people's intuition usually fails them completely.
Oh, totally.
By the time the son turned 20, the original 10 coins had grown to roughly 30.5 coins, a solid return. But the farmer didn't withdraw the money. He let the compounding continue.
Now what happens?
By the time the son was 50 years old, those original 10 silver coins had multiplied to 167 coins.
Wow. Why do you think the farmer succeeded where so many others fail? It's not just that he found a decent interest rate, it's that he managed to bypass a fundamental flaw in human psychology.
We're just not wired for it.
No, our brains are wired to think linearly. 1, 2, 3, 4. We are terrible at intuitively grasping exponential growth curves. By locking that money away for 50 years, the farmer removed his own psychological bias, his own impatience from the equation.
He just got out of his own way.
He let the interest earn interest, completely unhindered by his own desire to spend it.
But that desire for rapid growth is exactly what derails most people, which leads directly into cure number 4. Guard thy treasures from loss. Arcad warns his students against the romantic, intoxicating desire to get rich quickly.
The get-rich-quick scheme.
Always a bad idea. The first rule of Babylonian investing is the absolute protection of the principal.
And he openly shares his humiliating failure with the brickmaker to drive this point home, doesn't he?
He does.
Hey.
He strips away his own ego. He tells them that before you part with your gold, you must ensure that the principal is safe, that it can be reclaimed, and that you are consulting wise men who handle money daily. If you chase absurdly high returns in unfamiliar territories, the penalty for that risk is the absolute destruction of your foundational wealth.
Now, Cures 5, 6, and 7 really shift the focus from the mechanics of money to the holistic lifestyle of a wealth builder. Cure 5 is, make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. In short, own your own home.
The contrast between renting and owning in ancient Babylon was stark. If you were renting, you were likely living in cramped, noisy quarters, paying exorbitant rates to a landlord who could evict you on a whim.
Sounds familiar.
The money just vanished every month. Arcad advocates for owning property so that a family has a walled garden, a place to grow food, and a sense of permanence. Every payment made on a home is a payment toward equity, rather than a tribute to someone else's wealth.
It's fascinating how that exact debate still rages today. Then, Cure 6 looks even further down the timeline. Ensure a future income.
The ancient blueprint for pensions and life insurance.
Right. Arcad recognized that men grow old and lose their physical vitality, and that disease or accidents can leave a family completely destitute. He urged the citizens to make small, consistent deposits into long-term holdings, specifically earmarked for their twilight years or for their widows.
But Cure 7 is arguably the most profound, because it isn't about money or real estate at all. Cure 7 is, increase thy ability to earn. This rule demands that you look inward.
I love this one because it's so actionable. Arcad points out that your desires must be highly specific. If a man says his goal is to be rich, that is a totally useless desire.
It's too vague.
Exactly. It's too nebulous. It doesn't give your brain a target to solve for. But a desire to earn 5 pieces of gold, that is a tangible, measurable goal. Once you figure out the mechanics of acquiring 5 pieces of gold, you just apply that exact same refined skill to get 10, then 20, then 1,000.
And Arcad uses his own background as a scribe to illustrate this perfectly. When he was sitting in that sweltering hall of records, he noticed that some men were carving more tablets per day and consequently getting paid more.
Right.
Instead of stewing in resentment or complaining about the unfairness of the system, he actively studied them. He analyzed their techniques, the way they held the stylus, the way they prepared the clay, and he relentlessly refined his own craft until no one in the room could outcarve him.
He proved that the ultimate asset isn't gold, it's yourself. Refining your craft directly correlates to a higher income.
That is the ultimate defense against economic downturns. If you lose all your gold, but you have highly developed, irreplaceable skills, you can generate wealth all over again. Wealth is the natural byproduct of a highly competent, continuously learning individual.
So let's say a listener hears these 7 cures. They're incredibly logical. But there is still that nagging feeling. Like, why do some people who seem to follow the rules still hit roadblocks while others just seem unbelievably lucky?
Yeah, luck is the elephant in the room.
The deep dive shifts locations here to address that. We move to the Temple of Learning, where Babylonian citizens gathered to debate philosophy and economics. And the topic on the floor is exactly this: the goddess of good luck.
It's one of the most revealing debates in the text. They start by trying to define what luck actually is.
Hmm,
Is it purely random chance, like finding a purse of gold dropped in the street?
right.
The crowd quickly realizes that finding dropped gold is a statistical anomaly. If a financial plan relies on waiting for that kind of luck, it's a plan guaranteed to fail.
So the moderator of the debate pivots the conversation. If luck isn't found in random windfalls, maybe we should examine the times luck almost arrived, but slipped away. They start talking about missed opportunities.
And this brings up the devastating cost of procrastination. A merchant in the crowd stands up and shares a story from his youth. His father had tipped him off to an incredible investment.
What was it?
A young, innovative man had designed a system of water wheels powered by oxen that could raise water from the river and turn entirely barren land into highly fertile agricultural fields.
Oh, wow.
The father urged his son to invest a tenth of his earnings into this syndicate.
But the merchant was young. He had his eye on these luxurious imported red robes from the East for himself and his wife. He wanted immediate gratification, so he told his father he'd think about it. He delayed. He procrastinated.
And we know how that ends.
Yeah.
By the time the merchant finally realized the immense long-term value of the water wheel project, the syndicate was fully funded. The project succeeded wildly, and it paid out massive lifelong dividends to the early investors.
Just massive FOMO.
Oh, the worst kind. The merchant missed out on generational wealth because of a temporary, fleeting desire to wear a fancy robe.
Then an animal trader in the crowd shares a story that is even more agonizing. He was returning to Babylon late one night, and the massive city gates were already locked. He's settling in for the night outside the walls when a desperate farmer approaches him.
Okay.
The farmer has a flock of 900 sheep. He begs the trader to buy the entire flock right then and there for a fraction of their actual worth because the farmer's wife is deathly ill back in their village, and he needs the money to rush home immediately.
The trader is a professional. He knows this is the deal of a lifetime. But it's pitch black outside. The dust is blowing, he's exhausted from traveling, and the prospect of counting 900 moving sheep in the dark is overwhelming.
I mean, I kind of get it, but still.
His fatigue and stubbornness kick in. He refuses to hand over the money that night, telling the frantic farmer he will count them and pay him at first light.
And what happens? First thing in the morning, the city gates swing open and 4 rival buyers rush out. The city is preparing for a siege, the king's guard is buying up all available food, and these buyers pay the farmer 3 times what he was asking the night before.
Wow.
The trader lost a fortune simply because he hesitated when the opportunity was staring him right in the face.
The analysis of these stories by a Syrian man in the crowd is brilliant. He refuses to let the merchant or the trader blame the goddess of luck. He accurately labels them both as procrastinators.
Right, call it what it is.
He defines procrastination not just as laziness, but as an active internal enemy, a thief that quietly steals your wealth while you make excuses. The consensus they reach in the temple is profoundly empowering. The goddess of good luck only favors the bold.
Fortune favors the bold.
Exactly. Good luck is simply the act of recognizing a valid opportunity and having the discipline and decisiveness to act on it immediately.
Action over hesitation. But how do you know which actions are bold and which are just foolish?
This transitions us to the story of Nomasir, who is Arkad's son. You would naturally assume that being the son of the wealthiest man in the empire means you just inherit the vaults of gold and live a life of leisure.
Right, the trust fund kid.
But Arkad fundamentally understands that unearned wealth destroys the recipient. He refuses to give Nomasir the estate without a test. He gives his son 1 bag of gold and 1 heavy clay tablet with the 5 laws of gold carved into it.
Such a dad move. Seriously. He tells Nomasir to go out into the world for 10 years. If he can prove he knows how to handle money, he gets the inheritance. If not, Arkad will leave his wealth to the priests.
So Nomasir leaves for the city of Nineveh, and his journey is a masterclass in what not to do. He doesn't read the tablet. He relies entirely on his own ego and his heavy purse.
A dangerous combo.
Almost immediately upon arriving in Nineveh, he falls in with a syndicate of smooth-talking men who convince him to bet heavily on a horse race, claiming the horse is absolutely unbeatable.
It's the ancient equivalent of an insider trading tip or a crypto pump and dump scheme.
Precisely. And of course, the race is rigged, and No Monsieur loses a massive portion of his gold. Panicking to make it back, he rushes into a retail partnership with a friend who has zero business experience.
Oh, no.
The shop fails miserably, and the rest of the gold evaporates. No Monsieur is left completely destitute, sleeping on the streets of Nineveh.
And only then, when he has literally nothing left, does he finally pull out the heavy clay tablet his father gave him. What does he actually read on this thing that makes the light bulb finally go off?
He reads the 5 laws of gold.
Hmm.
And as he reads them, he realizes every single mistake he just made was entirely predictable.
What are the laws?
Well, Law 1. Gold comes gladly to the man who saves 10%. He hadn't saved anything, he just spent his father's money. Law 2. Gold works diligently for the wise owner who finds a profitable employment. He hadn't built a business, he threw it into a gamble.
Right.
Law 3. Gold clings to the protection of the cautious owner who invests it under the advice of wise men. He listened to complete strangers at a racetrack. Law 4. Gold slips away from the man who invests it in businesses he is not familiar with. That was his failed retail shop.
Man, he broke all of them.
And Law 5. Gold flees the man who forces it to impossible earnings or follows the alluring advice of tricksters.
It's a complete indictment of his actions, but it's also the blueprint for his redemption. Stripped of his unearned wealth, No Monsieur is forced to start over as a common laborer, carrying heavy bricks for the city walls of Nineveh.
Talk about a reality check.
Yeah. But he starts applying the laws. He saves his copper pennies from his grueling labor. Then, applying the third law, he seeks out his boss, a man who has proven his wisdom in managing large construction projects.
And the boss recognizes No Monsieur's discipline and invites him to join a syndicate of workers. They are pooling their tiny savings to buy large shipments of bronze scrap to cast the massive new gates for the city. It's a business No Monsieur now understands, backed by a man he trusts.
And it works. Because he applied the philosophy instead of relying on luck, his wealth begins to compound. When he finally returns to Babylon 10 years later to face his father, he doesn't just bring back the original bag of gold.
He brings back more.
He brings back 3 bags of gold. 2 specifically to pay for the wisdom on the clay tablet, which he declares is infinitely more valuable than the gold itself. He proved that applied wisdom creates wealth from nothing, while gold without wisdom quickly vanishes.
So we've established the rules for acquiring wealth and bouncing back from failure. But the text introduces a totally different kind of threat. Let's explore what happens when you've followed the laws, your purse is fat, and suddenly your family finds out you have money.
This is where the mechanics of wealth collide violently with human emotion. We meet Rodin, who is a spearmaker. He's incredibly skilled, and he designs a brilliant new, highly effective spearhead for the king's royal guard.
Okay.
The king is so pleased that he rewards Rodin with 50 gold coins. 50! That is a life-altering fortune for an artisan. But Rodin isn't throwing a party. He is paralyzed with anxiety.
Because of his sister, right?
Exactly. His sister, whom he loves dearly, has heard about the windfall. She approaches him and demands that he lend the 50 gold coins to her husband so he can set up a shop and become a wealthy merchant.
Oh, that's a tough spot.
Rodin is trapped. He knows the gold represents his future security, and he doesn't want to lose it. But he also doesn't want to alienate his sister and cause a massive family rift.
In his desperation, Rodin goes to see Mathon, who is the city's premier gold lender. Mathon handles money all day, every day, so he understands the psychology of debt better than anyone.
What does Mathon say?
Mathon listens to Rodin's dilemma and responds by telling him a fable about an ox and an ass. It's a brilliant allegory for emotional lending. Mathon tells of an ox who complains bitterly to his friend, the ass, about how brutal his life is, dragging the heavy plow through the fields from dawn until dusk.
Yeah.
The ass, wanting to be a good friend and alleviate the ox's suffering, gives him some advice. He tells the ox to collapse in the morning and pretend to be sick so the farmer will let him rest.
And the ox takes the advice. But the farmer still needs the field plowed that day, so what does he do? He yokes the ass to the plow instead.
Backfired completely.
The ass, who only wanted to help, ends up doing all the backbreaking work intended for the ox, ruining his own day.
Mathon delivers the lesson clearly to Rodin. He says, if you desire to help thy friend, do so in a way that will not bring thy friend's burdens upon thyself.
But Madel doesn't just offer parables, he offers a literal physical system for evaluating risk. He takes Rodin into his private vault and shows him his token box. This is fascinating because it's essentially an ancient credit scoring system.
Yeah, Mathon explains that every single time he lends money, he demands a physical token of collateral from the borrower, a carved ring, a heavy bracelet, a unique piece of bone. He places that token in the box.
Right.
If the loan is fully repaid, the token is returned. If the borrower defaults, the token stays in the box permanently, serving as a physical reminder of Mathon's failure in judgment.
The physical weight of those tokens is staggering when you hear the stories behind them. Mathon pulls out a beautiful bronze necklace. He tells Rodin it belonged to a friend who married a deeply materialistic, high-maintenance woman.
This story is wild.
The friend kept borrowing money to buy her extravagant gifts to keep her happy, blew all the gold, and eventually, in a fit of rage over their poverty, she murdered him. The necklace stays in the box.
Then Mathon pulls out another token, a heavily jeweled bracelet. It belonged to a desperate mother who pledged her own jewelry so her lazy, completely inexperienced son could buy a stake in a merchant caravan.
Another terrible investment.
Exactly. The son, who had never worked a day in his life, was useless on the trail and was eventually abandoned in the desert. The gold was lost. The mother lost her jewels.
Mathon uses these tragic stories to explain to Rodin how a professional categorizes risk. He says there are three distinct types of borrowers. First, there are those who offer property or physical collateral worth significantly more than the loan. These loans are safe.
Right.
Second, there are those who don't have property but have a long history of reliable income and a relentless work ethic. These are safe, provided the borrower remains honest and doesn't fall ill.
But the third category is where the danger lies. These are borrowers driven by intense emotions, grand ambitions, or desperation, but who possess absolutely no practical experience, no collateral, and no history of managing money.
Red flags everywhere.
Mathon warns that lending to this third group almost universally results in the loss of the gold and the bitter destruction of the relationship.
And Rodin realizes his brother-in-law falls squarely into that toxic third category. The man has ambition, sure, but he has zero experience running a merchant business. Mathon's final advice to Rodin is a masterclass in setting boundaries.
What's the advice?
He tells him, better a little caution than a great regret. He advises Rodin not to hand over the 50 coins. Instead, offer the brother-in-law 1 single year's worth of savings as a trial. If he succeeds, wonderful. But if he fails, Rodin hasn't sacrificed his foundational wealth on the altar of family guilt.
It's a powerful lesson in protecting what you've built, but we have to address the elephant in the room. What if the listener isn't holding 50 gold coins? What if they aren't worried about protecting their wealth because they're currently drowning in the opposite?
Right. What if they were suffocating under the weight of debt?
The source material addresses this head-on with what I think is the most dramatic, cinematic narrative in the entire collection, the story of Dabasir the camel trader.
Dabasir's life is a cautionary tale of unchecked lifestyle inflation. As a young man in Babylon, he wanted to live like the wealthy elite, even though he didn't have the income. He bought luxury garments, expensive food, and gifts for his wife entirely on credit.
He ignored the laws of gold completely.
Completely. His debt spiraled out of his control until the merchants demanded their money. Terrified of the consequences and the humiliation, Dabasir makes the worst possible decision. He flees Babylon.
The flight response.
He runs away from his debts, joins a band of violent desert highwaymen, gets captured by guards, and is stripped of his freedom and sold into brutal slavery in Syria.
He hits absolute rock bottom. He's wearing rags, starving, and enslaved. But the psychological pivot of the entire story hinges on a conversation he has with his master's first wife, a sharp, observant woman named Sira.
Syria is amazing.
She looks at Dabasir and asks him a question that cuts straight to his core. Do you have the soul of a free man or the soul of a slave?
Dabasir gets defensive. He says, of course I'm a free man. I just had a run of terrible bad luck.
But Sira violently rejects that excuse. She says, your debts are your enemies. They chased you out of your home.
Then what did you do?
Right. You ran from them. Only a man with a slave's soul runs from his responsibilities and allows his enemies to drive him away. A free man stands his ground and faces his problems.
Let's unpack the psychology of that realization. Dabasir is forced to confront the fact that his physical enslavement in Syria was just the outward manifestation of his internal mindset. Avoiding his debts proved he had the mentality of a slave.
It's profound. In that dirt courtyard, he makes a profound internal shift. He resolves to reclaim the soul of a free man. Sira, seeing his genuine transformation, helps him escape into the desert.
The journey back is grueling. He has no food, no water. He obviously hallucinating in the blistering heat. He is on the verge of dying in the sand. But it's his new identity, the burning desire to prove he has the soul of a free man returning to face his obligations, that keeps his legs moving.
And he makes it.
He survives the desert and makes it back to Babylon, not to hide in the shadows, but to walk straight up to every single person he owes money to.
And this is where the text executes a truly breathtaking historical crossover. The narrative suddenly shifts from ancient Babylon to England in the 1930s. The text includes a series of transcribed letters written between 1934 and 1936 by a British professor named Alfred H. Shrewsbury from Nottingham University.
Professor Shrewsbury and his team of archaeologists had excavated and translated Dabasir's actual physical clay tablets from the ruins of Babylon. But what makes this so compelling is the personal context.
They were struggling too.
Big time. Professor Shrewsbury and his wife were living a nightmare. They were academics expected to maintain a certain societal standard in 1930s England, but behind closed doors, they were secretly drowning in massive consumer debt. They owed the grocer, the butcher, the landlord.
And they were terrified of the scandal it would cause at the university if they were found out. The stress was destroying their marriage. But as Shrewsbury painstakingly translates Dabasir's cuneiform tablets, he realizes something incredible.
What does he realize?
That the ancient camel trader hasn't just recorded a diary entry. Dabasir has left behind a precise mathematical formula for escaping crippling debt while simultaneously building wealth.
We call it the 10-70-20 formula. Dabasir's plan was unyielding. First, save 10% of all you earn for yourself and hide it away. Do not touch it for any reason.
That's the baseline.
Second, you must aggressively reorganize your life to live strictly on 70% of your income. House, food, clothes, make it fit in 70%. Third, take the remaining 20% and divide it mathematically and equally among all your creditors every single month without fail.
Let's dive deep into the psychological brilliance of that formula, because it defies conventional logic. When people are deeply in debt, their natural instinct, or the intense pressure from debt collectors, is to throw 100% of their available extra money toward the debt to make it disappear faster.
Right. If you owe money, pay the money.
But Dabasir, and subsequently Professor Shrewsbury, realized that doing that completely breaks the human spirit. If you work 60 hours a week and every single penny goes to past mistakes, you feel like a slave on a treadmill. There is no joy, no momentum.
So paying yourself first is crucial.
By forcing yourself to save that 10% first, even while the debt is crushing you, you are actively participating in wealth creation. You literally feel the physical weight of the coins accumulating in your purse. You begin to identify as a wealth builder rather than just a miserable debt payer.
But I have to ask, how does that actually work in reality? If I owe a massive amount of money to a creditor and I walk in and say, hey, I can't pay you what I owe, but I'll give you this tiny fraction of 20% of my income, aren't they going to lose their minds?
Well, some of Dabasir's creditors did screen at him. But the psychology of debt negotiation is fascinating. Creditors want their money, but more than that, they want certainty. A runaway debtor yields zero return.
That makes sense.
Dabasir went to them with clarity. He said, I have a systemic plan. You are on my ledger. You will receive your exact percentage of this, 20%, on this specific day every month until the debt is cleared.
And they accepted that.
The vast majority of creditors respected the discipline. A reliable, steady, partial payment from a man operating a strict mathematical plan is infinitely better than the chaotic promises of a desperate man.
And Professor Shrewsbury tested this ancient theory in modern reality. He and his wife swallowed their pride. They went to the English grocer, the landlord, the tailor. They admitted they were overwhelmed, but they presented the Babylonian 10-70-20 plan.
And the incredible part, it worked flawlessly. The creditors backed off the aggressive collection tactics because the payments arrived like clockwork. Within a few short years, Shrewsbury's debts were completely eradicated.
That's amazing.
Furthermore, because they had religiously saved that 10% the entire time, by the day they were debt-free, they already had a massive compounding investment portfolio. The mathematics of a 5,000-year-old camel trader literally saved a modern academic family from ruin.
It completely validates the premise of the entire book. The mechanics of human emotion, the crushing anxiety of debt, and the mathematical reality of compounding interest do not change, whether you are wearing a linen tunic in the desert or a tweed jacket in Nottingham.
They really don't.
As we near the end of our deep dive, we have to address one final, very common misconception about wealth building. We spent an hour talking about saving, budgeting, guarding investments, and fighting off debt. But what is the end game? Is the ultimate goal of accumulating all this wealth to just eventually sit around on a silk cushion and do absolutely nothing?
That is the great illusion of wealth, and the text shatters it through the story of Sharunada and Hadangula.
Okay, who are they?
Sharunada is an immensely wealthy older merchant. He is leading a massive lucrative caravan across the desert. Riding next to him is a young man named Hadangula. Hadan is the grandson of Sharunada's former highly respected business partner, Arad Gula.
And Hadan Gula is the quintessential spoiled heir. He's draped in flashy jewelry, wearing incredibly expensive robes that are totally impractical for the desert, and he's complaining endlessly.
Constantly whining.
He looks out at the laborers working in the fields and scoffs, saying, "Work is only for slaves." He genuinely believes that the entire point of his grandfather's immense wealth was so that he, the grandson, would never have to lift a finger or break a sweat in his entire life.
Sharunada listens to this arrogant entitlement, and he decides the boy needs a severe reality check. He decides to tell the boy a deeply guarded secret that completely upends the young man's worldview.
What's the secret?
He reveals that both he, Sharunada, and the boy's revered, wealthy grandfather, Arad Gula, were not born into nobility. They were both once slaves. They literally wore heavy bronze collars around their necks and worked in the brutal chain gangs.
Hadan is absolutely horrified. His entire identity is tied to his noble bloodline, and he violently refuses to believe his grandfather was a slave.
But Sharunada continues. He explains the paradigm shift that elevated them from the chain gang to the merchant elite. When they were slaves, they met another enslaved man named Megiddo.
Okay.
While the other slaves naturally tried to shirk their duties, hide from the overseers, and do as little as possible to conserve energy, Megiddo attacked his work with incredible ferocity. Megiddo told them a secret. He said, "Work is the best friend I've ever known."
Wow.
He explained that masters value and eventually reward hardworking, indispensable slaves, while lazy slaves are treated brutally and sold off to the worst conditions.
And Sharnada actually tested this theory. He was eventually bought by a baker. Instead of just sweeping the floors and doing the bare minimum, he observed the baker. He asked to learn the complex process of baking the honey cakes.
He took initiative.
Once he mastered it, he went to his master with a business proposal. He asked if he could take the extra cakes into the city streets to sell them during his limited free time, promising to split the profits with the master. The master agreed.
So he baked his way to freedom.
Sharbanada literally baked and hustled his way to freedom. He bought his own life back by working extra hours.
This completely redefines the concept of labor. Work was not a punishment for Sharunada. It was the vehicle for his salvation, the engine of his freedom, and eventually the foundation of his immense wealth as a caravan merchant.
Right.
He tells Hadan Gula that his grandfather, Murad Gula, bought his freedom using the exact same philosophy, through relentless, high-quality, indispensable work.
When Hadan Gula hears the undeniable truth of this history, he is deeply, profoundly moved. He looks at his own hands, soft and covered in rings, and realizes his lazy attitude is a direct insult to the grit, the sweat, and the labor that built his family's name.
It breaks his whole worldview.
In a highly symbolic moment, he strips off his jeweled rings and his flashy earrings. He is humbled by the realization that work is not a curse for the poor. Work brings dignity, it commands respect, and it is the absolute engine of all the financial cures we've discussed today.
It perfectly ties together the entire philosophy of Babylon. To recap the ultimate thesis of all the sources we've explored today, wealth is not a mystery. It is not a secret guarded by the elite, nor is it the result of the goddess of fortune smiling upon you randomly.
It's basically an equation.
Wealth is the strict, predictable result of adhering to fundamental laws of human behavior and mathematics. You must pay yourself 10% first to shift your mindset from slave to master.
You must aggressively budget your lifestyle to defeat Parkinson's law.
You must make your money multiply through the quiet patience of compound interest. You must fiercely guard your principal from fast-talking tricksters and emotional loans to inexperienced family members.
You must confront your debts head-on with a mathematical plan to reclaim the soul of a free man.
And above all, you must view hard work and continuous learning not as burdens to escape, but as your truest, most reliable friends.
Babylon itself eventually fell to ruins. Its massive defensive walls crumbled into the desert dust millennia ago, but its financial architecture, the precise mathematics of human behavior and gold, is eternal. I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. through ancient sands and timeless ledgers.
It's been a great journey.
Remember, these exact principles saved an ancient camel trader running for his life in the Syrian desert, and they saved a modern professor facing ruin in a 1930s British university alike. The math doesn't care who you are. It is sitting there waiting for you to use it.
It requires immense discipline, yes, but as we've seen from the stories today, the alternative is the unending, soul-crushing discipline of debt and financial slavery.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. If the ancient Babylonians could build the richest, most magnificent city in the known world out of nothing but sun-baked dirt and river water, simply by organizing their efforts, defending their resources, and applying these laws, look at your own life. Look at the incredible resources, the technology, the instant access to global information and markets you have at your fingertips right now. What kind of empire could you build if you finally stopped letting your gold slip through your fingers like goat's milk through a strainer? Start your 10% today, and let's see what you can build in your own patch of dirt.